If we look very closely at those things in life that bring us pleasure and enjoyment, what we will notice is that the enjoyment does not ever come from the object or the activity. It comes from the anticipation. It comes from the moment of losing ourselves, where we get carried away by that pleasure and we lose that inner monologue very briefly as we become overwhelmed with sensual, sensory experiences. And because this experience is always temporary and short-lived, we almost immediately follow that high with a low. By contrast, that super high makes normal feel super low. And we immediately start craving some new form of satisfaction, of pleasure, of acquisition that'll give us some boost in our mood. And just like a mouse chasing after cheese in a maze, we are searching for something else immediately for that enjoyment. And it is that mindless chasing combined with the false belief that something will bring me happiness, lasting, true happiness, that turns enjoying something wonderful into an addiction that enslaves us. And it keeps us stuck on that roller coaster of life where we are just strapped in and we have no control over where that roller coaster is going. And we want to turn that roller coaster of life into more like a NASCAR race, because a NASCAR driver is also flying down the track and similar to a roller coaster where there's sharp turns and we are just getting whipped around this track. But the difference is a NASCAR driver, any sports car driver, any race car driver, is fully present. They have to be always fully present so that they can stay in control. And this is what we want to do with our lives. We don't want to give up the things we enjoy because we have physical bodies and they like pleasure more than pain. And we have to respect that and to allow ourselves to have spices and other things in our lives that create enjoyment for enjoyment's sake. But we don't want to let those things, whether it is food or drugs or alcohol or entertainment or work, to drive us, to keep us strapped in against our will. And there are really two ways to overcoming that addictive tendency that we all have inside of us for something. For most people, it's screens, because it's so ubiquitous and so easy to get hooked on them, and that we don't even consider it an addiction. Most of us are addicted to screens. When you combine the phone, the TV, and the computer screen, it's almost mandatory in our modern society that we be addicted to screens. But even coffee, sugar, all of these things that give us that high and then give us a crash. And so we spend so much of our lives managing those lows and trying to ride those highs. And we spend so much effort making sure we get our fix right when we need it so that we can keep it together. So that even something as little as caffeine can easily become an addiction that keeps us preoccupied mentally, keeps us chasing and running on that hamster wheel, going nowhere. And so the first technique for overcoming those tendencies is what we can call the race car method. A race car driver is going to study every single corner and turn and inch of the track that they are racing on. They will simulate and practice over and over and over again so that they stay present and alert, so they never panic, so they're never unaware of what is going to happen. And we have to do all of those things when it comes to engaging in these seductive habits. It is always in these pleasures that we lose our mind, that we overdo it, overconsume, overwork, and all we can think about is more, more, more. And so in these times when we lose ourselves, this is the time that we need to be extra vigilant, extra alert, on guard for those thoughts that take us over, those impulsive thoughts. Just like a race car driver needs to create muscle memory for knowing exactly what every turn requires, we need to develop that muscle memory to stay extra vigilantly present in those times when we want to escape, when we want to drown out our thoughts and our worries, and recognize those disturbing thoughts and emotions that we are trying to avoid, and to actually create a peaceful space to allow them to be. As soon as we use something to feel better, we are building our own set of crutches. We are weakening our internal resolve as we rely on something outside of us for the briefest temporary relief that in the long run only makes us suffer. Because being hooked, being dependent, and to always be going from highs to lows is not the way to be truly peaceful and have lasting happiness. Just like when we are racing down a track as if we were a NASCAR driver and adrenaline is pumping, we have to stay highly alert. And it is not a dissimilar danger when it comes to engaging in whatever enjoyable activities we like, because they make us lose our presence, our mindfulness. And that is why addiction is so seductive, because it convinces us that it is the easy, quick fix for our problems. The commercials and ads we see everywhere reinforce that idea that we are lacking something, and that is why we're not happy. But the truth is, we all have more than anybody living 100 years ago had. And we have higher rates of depression, anxiety, and stress. And a big part of that stems from another aspect of addiction, which is that addiction makes happiness too easy. We don't have to work hard to achieve it. We don't have to sit and meditate. We don't have to face our fears, our worries, our stresses. We can just use a substance and it all goes away. That is the allure. Or not even use a substance, but we can lose ourselves in our work and we are gone. We have obliterated the train of thought in our mind that is negative and worrisome. But deep down, those thoughts are still there. Those emotions are still there. Those beliefs about ourselves are still there. And so we will continue to need to numb that part of ourselves, to obscure it from our consciousness. And addictive behavior seems like the most obvious choice because it is readily available. We can all do something outside of us to change the way we're thinking and feeling, to obliterate our mind and stop those thoughts that are discomforting. But something we know about human nature, looking back through history, is that struggle, that healthy stress, that challenges awaken us. They strengthen us. Just like going to the gym. If we made it easy on ourselves, we would see no progress. And our minds also need a positive, healthy challenge. And what that means is facing and overcoming those negative thoughts, those scary thoughts, those difficult memories that we are stuffing down. And the mind training that we can do of turning inward and allowing what is there to be and creating a peaceful, safe space for our fears and our doubts and our pain is the way we overcome those fears. It's the way we rise to those challenges, and it is the way we strengthen our mind so that it becomes the master of the ego and not the slave. And here I am speaking of ego, not as in I think I'm egotistical and I have a big image of myself, but the ego being the stream of thoughts that arise in our mind, that content of our brain that appears as thoughts, that has this identity of self, this false identity of believing it is who we truly are. But it is only part of the contents of our mind. Just like the microphone in front of me, your cell phone in front of you. These are contents of what your mind is perceiving, but they are not your mind. And the more we understand this higher self, the true nature of our mind, not just this one aspect, the thinking machine, this is how we break free from whatever impulsive thoughts pop into the ego. And we develop that inner muscle every time we let a negative impulse go by without acting on it. Just as each time I smoke a cigarette, I am reaffirming and strengthening the neural pathway of being a smoker. But every time I don't act on that, I am creating new wirings in my brain that strengthen my ability to always do what is right for myself in the long term and in the short term. And it starts just simply by allowing that chaos to be, by being the sky, not the storm. That changeless sky from which sometimes is clear skies and sunny, sometimes is dark and stormy. And it is all okay to the sky. That is how we truly become okay with those difficulties in life that we used to rely on something outside of us to alleviate the pain from. Which brings me to the second technique for avoiding addiction. Any type of addictive tendency that is easily overdone. And that is that we must discover the joy of stillness. This is true peace. Most of the people on this earth have not experienced true peace. And true peace is the most blissful, relaxing state we can possibly be in. It is the only way to truly be joyful in a lasting way, because there is no opposite. There is no bouncing back from a high. This is the deepest centeredness of our being. For most people on this earth, to sit in stillness and silence, which is by definition the most peaceful state we can be in physically. The mind will make it so torturous and insufferable that most people cannot do this for 30 minutes. And even fewer people who can even sit for 30 minutes, even fewer than are able to sit for 30 minutes, are able to actually find that peace, because the mind is constantly trying to disturb that peace. And it will say 1,000 times how boring it is, how much it sucks, why are we doing this, anything's better than this. And we will truly know our ego when we do this, because it will be screaming at us, using every form of persuasion it has ever learned to try to get us to get up, move, do something else, engage in that addiction we love so much. But if anyone can stick with that feeling, allow it to be, don't want happiness and peace and stillness, but just allow whatever happens to happen. Just accept whatever is happening. And through this radical acceptance and embracing of whatever is to arise, we can eventually find peace, because that is the peace. The peace is total acceptance, total contentment, no longer fighting, no longer resisting. And eventually we see these moments of presence, like breath to a drowning person, like light shining into a pitch black cave. And this bliss gets revealed to us at first in brief glimpses, but it gets more and more the more that we sit with that feeling and just don't resist it. Don't turn away. Don't run towards the addiction to obliterate the mind, and instead discover how to silence it yourself. And what you will notice is that all these addictions, whether it is a screen, a substance, gambling, work, or some kind of adrenaline junkie sport, are all just taking you away from that present moment stillness, which is truly the greatest feeling we can ever have. It is like having your favorite comedian becoming your best friend and telling you jokes and entertaining you 24/7, and also cooking your favorite foods, and also giving you back rubs in Hawaii on the beach while dolphins play with you times a million. Everything else just pales in comparison to the feeling of stillness and presence, to the deepest peace that we can ever know. And we really do have to take a look around and notice how people have lost the ability to enjoy peace, to even experience it, because their mind disturbs it. And even if we had all the pleasures in the world, we would get sick of it eventually, because they are not the source of true happiness. That new car smell that gives us that high when we buy a new car wears off. The favorite foods we love eventually will make us sick if we keep eating them. And when we discover the infinite joy from within, that does take a little bit of work to reacclimatize ourselves to it, then we become free from any kind of addictive tendency, because we know that anything that disrupts the peace and harmony of our body and our mind only will take us further from true happiness, not towards. We can still enjoy treats here and there and all the things we love in this life. We don't have to live in a cave or give up all our possessions. But the surprising thing that happens is when we discover the inner joy, the habits, the things we used to enjoy that weren't good for us often naturally fall away from our lives. Without any effort, we just naturally choose what will bring me the most joy in the long term, not just the short term. It is when we try to quit addictions or give up unhealthy activities, and we try to knuckle our way through it. We try to just keep focusing on not doing the thing, that we keep that addiction having power over us. And instead, when we turn towards the bliss, the peace, the lasting and true joy within us, that those addictions are able to cease with ease. So all we have to do, like the race car driver, is become masters at understanding the nature of addiction, of that dependency and attachment to temporary pleasure, so that we stay in the driver's seat and don't lose control. And then, secondly, by becoming masters of our mind and understanding that this is where true happiness or suffering exists. It is the root cause of how we experience our lives. And when we understand the mind, we no longer seek to fix the symptoms of an unhappy mind. And we go to the source and we recognize that it is truly stillness that we are seeking. And we are powerful enough to create it ourselves. And that is the skill that we all must learn if we want peace in this world. Much love. One of the hardest times in anyone's life is when we lose someone we love. And this is also one of those times where we become the most susceptible to addiction, to finding some pleasure that can free us from a moment of the immense pain that we're feeling. And this is something I understand personally. And I wrote a book about it called Grief and Spiritual Healing: Surviving Life After Loss. And it is available on Amazon. And if you or someone you love is going through a period of grief, please share this book with them. And I hope it brings some comfort and relief in these difficult times. Thank you.